Quarterbacks want to play at Georgia. I don't know if you've noticed, but they enjoy playing at Georgia. Criticism is going to be there in everything we do, but the opportunity to play at the University of Georgia and be a quarterback, I can just start naming all the ones who have played here and been really good. That was Kirby Smart a couple of weeks ago talking about the most important position in football, quarterback, something that he's been criticized for consistently, and probably the only thing you really could criticize him for in his time at Georgia, or at least the most glaring part. Dean Legge from Dog Post, Making You a Smarter Georgia Fan. He actually said that on signing day in December. And as it turns out, although it was true at the time, he's got even more data to back that up with Gunnar Stockton, a five-star quarterback from Raven County in Northeast Georgia, committed to the Bulldogs since he said that. Kirby hasn't had any issues getting guys to Georgia to play quarterback. When you start thinking about Jacob Eason, Justin Fields, Jake Fromm, all three of those guys signing back to back to back. Two of the three of them consensus five-star players. And now you've got Brock Vandergriff, a five-star guy, with Gunnar Stockton on the way. Very few. I don't think I would. I really would need to go back and look and calculate if any other programs in college football in that time have signed that many quarterbacks who are five-star, former five-star players. This does not include JT Daniels, who also is a five-star player. He just didn't sign with Georgia. He transferred in. So Justin leaves, JT comes in. The amount of five stars stay the same. It's just that the trauma Georgia fans suffered through that time was pretty dramatic, needless to say. But what about what Kirby has to say here? Quarterbacks want to play at Georgia. Well, if you think about it, quarterbacks are going to want to play in the SEC. I mean, there's just very few schools outside of the SEC in the South, particularly Clemson, maybe Florida State. I don't even know if you could go that far. That are going to want to go and play in the SEC. And then when you look at the handful of SEC schools who really have had very good runs here this last half decade, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, those guys have all had good quarterbacks that have triggered their run to national championship games. Alabama with multiple quarterbacks who have done so. LSU with Joe Burrow, Georgia with Jake Fromm. We'll see what happens with JT Daniels. Needless to say, Georgia has attracted very good quarterbacks the entire time Kirby's been at Georgia. He is defensive about this. I don't think he's got to be, but he is defensive about this because it is the easiest criticism to make. And it all stems from picking Jake Fromm over Justin Fields. I mean, I was there I lived this live. There was no one on earth that would have picked Justin Fields over Jake Fromm at the time. There's a lot of J's in this. Whether you're talking about Jake, Jacob, Justin, and then obviously you got JT Daniels right now. So there are a lot of J's involved in these quarterbacks at Georgia for whatever reason. But in 2000, you go rewind to 2018. And Jake Fromm played pretty well. It was clear that he was not as good a talent as Justin Fields, but it was also clear that Justin Fields simply was not putting it together when he got out there. You would have delay of game penalties, just stuff that freshmen do. Clearly, when you're coming off a national championship appearance, you're not going to replace your starting quarterback. I mean, no one in their right mind would do that. That didn't happen at Clemson. They did not play for the national championship. They had gotten their asses handed to them by Alabama with what I would call not great quarterback in Kelly Bryant. And then they had Trevor Lawrence come. They could go through the ACC schedule. Pretty simple, let's be honest. That move happened after the Georgia Tech game, which means it happened after Texas A&M. There just weren't a lot of games that Clemson was going to lose from that point forward. Then you look at Nick Saban. People would say, well, why didn't he go to Tua sooner? Well, okay. I mean, we're talking about the greatest head coach in college football history, and I'm not being sarcastic. I'm being serious. Why didn't he go with Tua earlier in the 2017 season? Why did he wait until the 2017 national championship game and pulled Justin Fields in favor of Tua? Why did Dan Mullen go with Felipe Franks over, I was going to say Mac Jones. It was not Mac Jones. It was Kyle Trask in the 2019 season to start the season. He did. There are no simple formulas to any of this stuff. And once we get down into the weeds of all that, there's no question coaches are always going to absorb the blame if they don't win it all for the moves that they make at quarterback. But places like Georgia are always going to be spotlight situations. The best example of that is Matthew Stafford coming all the way across the country in the power time of Texas football. They had just played for a national championship when Matthew decided to come to Georgia, or they were in the midst of it with Vince Young. Matthew coming all the way to Athens, across the South, to play for Georgia. And we've seen that ever since. We've seen highly skilled guys from across the country, California, Texas, Florida, that have come to play for Georgia, Washington State. Now, would you have rather had Trevor Lawrence over these last 2 years? No question. Would you have rather had Justin Fields over the last 2 years? Yes, I think so at least. So, the problem with all of that is, and we're going to see this soon, is that there's only one ball, and you only typically have one quarterback who plays. Justin Fields played almost more than any backup besides DJ Shockley this century at Georgia. Backups just don't play a lot at quarterback. They just don't. It's not something that's common. And, that's what we saw with that. But in terms of other guys, you're going to see from here on out with Georgia, they're going to recruit nationally for quarterbacks. I don't know why they wouldn't. Everyone is going to recruit nationally for quarterbacks. And the best quarterback that Georgia can get is who they're going to land. We've seen this over and over again. I mean, take out Trevor Lawrence, okay? In the last 6 years of Kirby's recruiting, when have they not gotten the quarterback they wanted? I'll let you answer that to yourself. They identified Carson Beck early and wanted Carson. I mean, he committed a year before signing and enrolling at Georgia. He's got something to say about what the future is at quarterback at Georgia. So when Kirby starts talking about quarterbacks want to play at Georgia, that's a little bit of a defense mechanism for a coach who's been extremely successful in his time in Athens. It's just been the one thing where people can take shots at him. Ignorant shots, in many ways, which is one reason why Justin Fields left Georgia. But ignorant of the situation at the time. No one in their right mind would have started Justin Fields over Jake Fromm. With that said, if Justin had stuck around, I don't see how he wouldn't have started at some stage in 2019 because Jake Fromm was struggling so much. But this thing here, you got JT Daniels, Jamie Newman, both transferring to Georgia in an offseason. Both were highly coveted in terms of their transferring at the time, and Georgia signed both of them. As long as Kirby Smart's at Georgia, pretty much I would say his number one competition there's going to be two programs. It's going to be Alabama and Oklahoma. Clemson, yeah, them too. But Oklahoma has certainly done a great job of cultivating talent quickly at quarterback. Alabama, I think the record speaks for itself. You don't have to be a great quarterback to win the national championship at Alabama. Jake Coker proves that. So, but in terms of the two, they right now have either three guys in the pipeline or two on campus that are five-star kids. And inevitably, five-star kids at quarterback, that matters one day or another. The problem is that almost every single high-level program, teams that are playing for the national championship, they are more likely than not to play with five-star quarterbacks. It's just the way it is. Anymore with transfers, that's going to become even more and more common. But from the jump here, quarterbacks want to play at Georgia. Kirby was responding to a question about Georgia's program signing five-star quarterback Brock Vandagriff, who I've not talked about really hardly at all here in this video. But, Brock decided not to go to Oklahoma after he had been committed to him for some time. It was too far. That was really essentially what Brock's issue was with it. and he wanted his grandparents to see him play. So that was something that attracted him being not so far down the road at all, 20 minutes from the stadium, so that Brock could play in front of his grandparents and his parents, and they could easily get to those games. That'd have been much tougher at Oklahoma. But what do you think about what Kirby has to say? Does he need to get this right with these quarterbacks? Does he need to take the next level? Or does he just need to keep recruiting the highest level kid that he can get, and it will work out at some stage? We got more to say about this on the website. Make sure you go to dogpost.com to check that out. In the meantime, there's a playlist over my right shoulder. Make sure to punch that. We'll see you on the next video.